What is the worst second-hand embarrassment you've had to suffer through? I was in a class with about 50 other people when this really quiet guy stood up and started to play Gangnam Style out of his phone and started doing the dance with a wide grin on his face. Nobody laughed, and so he sat down after about 10 seconds of singing and dancing, and the lecturer proceeded to carry on with lecture. I never thought this possible, but I am experiencing third-hand embarrassment. In middle school, a kid decided to don his karate wear and break a brick for the talent show. This intense music starts playing, and he comes out, bows his head and, HIYAA, hits the brick. It doesn't break. Tries a couple more times. It remains unperturbed. He stomps off the stage and tears. I'm sure to console him, people told him no one will remember this is 10 years. It's been more than 10 years. I still remember him as a kid who couldn't break the brick. Stuck on a cruise ship for 3 days after my friend proposed to his girlfriend on the first freaking day and she said no. That same first night she made out with some random guy in the hot tub. I'm honestly not sure how devastated my friend actually was, but it was intensified by the fact that he'd drink himself s-faced daily by 2 p.m. which would lead to him going to beg her to get back with him. At one point she was sitting on the new guy's lap at the bar and he grabbed her hand and confessed his love for her for what must have been the 5th time in 2 days. It was a constant battle of trying to pull him away and convince him to either go to sleep or come with us to another part of the ship. He is a good friend, so I felt terrible for him cause it was super crappy on her part and tried to help him all he would allow, but it was awful to watch, and by the end of the cruise the entire boat, it seemed like, knew what had happened. When I tried to bring it up with my girlfriend, who was on the cruise with me as well, days after we got home she straight up refused to talk about it, saying that was painful enough at the time so we never need to speak of it. Have this uncle who is extremely cheap and once took us out to dinner. After he got the bill he asks for the menu again and takes out his calculator and starts double checking the bill prices and menu prices. This goes on for 15 minutes while the waiter patiently waits next to the table. At the end he realizes he forgot his wallet and asks us to pay. Don't think I've ever tipped that generously. Airline pilot here. The captain and I had a guy from another airline riding in the jump seat between us and the cockpit of a US airline jet. The captain was a bit of a blowhard loudmouth and decided to make a comment when he saw an Air India plane. You know what I hate most about Indian women is that big red dot on their forehead. The jump seater said, "My wife is Indian," and produced a photo from his wallet of his family including his Indian wife with the bindi on her forehead. The captain only made it worse while he squirmed by asking some crap like, "Is she from Eastern India or Southern India? Because I'm referring to the ones from." My mind was cringing so horribly I blanked out on the rest of the conversation. Is she from Eastern India or Southern India? Because I'm referring to the ones from. I'm not xenophobic, just xenophobic. Recently went to a wedding where the groom had 5 or 6 different groomsmen, and they all gave a speech. First few were pretty good and funny. The last guy that went tried way too hard to make it funny. He started off with some lame cliche joke about how the bachelor party was crazy and that they'd never talk about it again. He actually paused and waited for laughter and not a single person laughed out of over 150. Then his hands started shaking and he kept losing his place. I think he eventually gave up after about 2 minutes of torture and just said, to the bride and groom, it was horrific. Get to the squirrel jokes. Was at a friend's brother's 21st and was standing around talking with some other guys. On the driveway a bunch of girls were dancing to the music. It was a really chill night, but it was about to get a lot chillier. The guy next to me said to the guy on his other side, "How about the rack on that blonde chick?" Other guy replied, "That's my daughter." First guy mumbled something and left at a brisk walk. 2 stand out from 1HS English class. Dude got called out by our teacher for plagiarizing while he gave a report in front of the class on a book we read. In particular, she asked what inlay thinking meant, and he stood there for a good 10 seconds of silence before she lectured everyone on not copying from other sources. A kid in our grade died from overdosing on drugs. He was pretty popular and his death shocked the school for a good while. Several of his closest friends were in this class. The day after his death, our teacher was out sick and we had a substitute. Naturally, she called out this guy's name during roll call. That hushed the class to the point of searing awkwardness and some girls started sobbing. I can still see the slow dawning of horror on the sub's face. Man, the administration fricked up royally on that one. That's definitely info that you need to give out. When my mother yells at someone who has no control over the situation, like yelling at the cashier for not knowing the price of chopped onions off the top of his head. My sister was on a first date with some guy she met online and was nervous, so she had Miso and me meet up with them. The guy was super braggy about being able to speak German, not knowing that Miso was raised there and speaks it fluently. So Miso tries to start a conversation with him in German. The guy apparently only spoke a few words of German and left embarrassed and without any chance of a second date. Miso still feels a little guilty about it. Ich bin ein Zwanghafter. I have a friend Jake who is partially deaf. He has hearing aids to help with that. We're cameramen and we were live streaming a college basketball game. We wear headsets to speak through the crowd and he has to take his hearing aids out to use it. He and I were taking a break during halftime and an old man who had a bag of candy, already weird, right, walked up to us and offered it to Jake, who still had his hearing aids out. Jake accepts this as the man giving us a bag of candy, when in reality he just offered a piece to each of us. Yep, plenty weird. Jake just walked off with the candy bag, munching away, as the old man helplessly tried to follow him through the crowd yelling, no, I just meant take one. Jesus Christ. It was uncomfortable in so many ways. I just walked away from the situation. I probably laughed way too hard at that. Sorry you were embarrassed, but it's pretty dang funny. I was on a train going between London and Manchester, UK, and went to use a bathroom. The toilet at the end of the carriage was disabled accessible, so it had a wide curved door that automatically opened at a steady and slow pace, about 20-30 seconds to complete, uninterruptible, retracting in a semi-circle to allow wheelchair access to the carriage. If you've traveled on these trains before, you'll know that to close the door you enter the stall, push a button to close the door, then when it's finished closing you press another to lock it. Someone had not told this to the lady in the loo. Just as I arrived, another person coming from the other direction pushed the outside button to open the door and it started its inevitable arc. For at least 30 excruciating seconds, the button pusher, myself, and eventually everyone sitting in the packed commuter carriage beyond who was facing in our direction, got to see the woman bend up from the seat, reach and hop to the other side of the cubicle and desperately pummel the door close lock buttons inside, pants around the ankles the whole time, white bottom flashing, at a merciless pace. The door opened fully, contemplated its life and then closed on the pitiful image within. The button pusher and I looked at each other, said nothing and went back to our seats. That is a pretty crap design. Seems like the kind of thing that could happen a lot. I'm usually the subject of first-hand embarrassment, but this time, a local radio station I listened to hosted some kind of Christmas charity event, where the DJs stood outside some kind of children's charity drive and talked about it to the people giving donations. They had been playing music in between, asking people their names and talking about how much they had given, stuff like, "Thanks to Dave from Cityville for the $300. Say hi Dave. Hi. You're welcome. Happy holidays." The cringe begins when a guy named Josh comes in to give some money to the charity. DJ. Wow. Josh has given $3,000, the most generous donation of the day. Josh. Yeah. Haha. I did. So how much do you have now? DJ. Thanks again Josh. And I think that puts us at 10,000. Josh. No. Who I mean after what I gave you how much do you have? DJ. We have 10,000 in donations Josh. Josh. No, I mean, what number did my donation put you over? At this point I've gone from confusion to realizing what Josh is trying to get the DJ to say. I'm actually facepalming for him. DJ. Well, before you donated we had about 8,000. Josh. No number. That's not what I mean. DJ. I don't quite know what you're getting at Josh. Josh. Get it now, you have over 9,000. DJ. What? Josh. Get it after what I gave you. You have over 9,000. DJ. Yeah, I don't. DJ. Like there's this show called Dragon Ball Z, and the guy in it, he says over 9,000 haha. DJ. Alright, right. Yeah, alright then. Basically, a guy donated thousands in charity over the radio just to get the DJ to say we have over 9,000. I'm pretty sure she didn't get the joke. and then he tried to explain it to her. I don't remember a lot of the details or the exact amount, but I'm pretty sure the guy donated in the thousands. He's probably kicking himself for donating 3k and not 2k, and vowing the next time there's something like that he'll donate the right amount, so they say it. Government class senior year teacher makes a comment about how we should stay off our phones in class and be careful about the things we send out. Proceeds to pull up a classmate's tweet that says something along the lines of, "This teacher is so dumb. This class freaking sucks." She was on her phone so didn't see it pulled up immediately. When the whole class fell silent, she finally looked up and turned bright red. The teacher kind of chuckled and continued on with the lesson. To be fair, that teacher had amazing timing. I always get this when I watch guys hit on girls unsuccessfully. One particularly painful example was a good friend of mine who is not the best when it comes to flirting, and he had just come out of an LTR, so safe to say he was rusty. At any rate, he makes a beeline toward this girl. I try to intervene and assure him that it will not work. She was seeing someone, and her friend had told me that my friend, currently making moves toward her, weirded her out a little. I pleaded and pleaded with him to just refrain from doing it, but he was having none of it, as he thought I just wanted to take a stab myself. Anyway, I watch helplessly as he moves towards her, slides up and attempts to hold her hand. She looks mildly scared, so he says to her in a fairly loud voice, "Don't worry, I'll hold you." At this point I have to look the other way as I am actually dying of embarrassments for him. She then slowly starts moving away looking quite fearful and then briskly walks outside. He comes back over and asks if he should go for her friend instead. Used to be a bag boy at a grocery store. One day I was bagging an older man's groceries, and the cashier begins to talk him. Cashier, in a polite voice, "Have you found everything you're looking for, man?" No response. Cashier, in a frustrated but polite voice, "Sir, have you found everything you're looking for, man?" No response. Cashier, in a patronizing and shouting tone, "Sir, have you found everything you're looking for, man?" Finally acknowledging the cashier, "Hey, I'm deaf." The cashier apologized profusely and the old man looked at her in disgust, while I did the brave thing and left to bring shopping carts back into the store. Well, in all fairness, it's not like he has a "I'm deaf" sign around his neck, so there was no way for her to know. I'd cut her a little slack, but still quite embarrassing nonetheless. Sleeping over my friend's house in 7th grade. I was trying to sleep on the floor. However, his parents decided to have very loud, wall-rattling freaking. I laid there trying to fall asleep for about 15 minutes, when a loud shriek hinted that it was over. I kinda laughed a little and my friend, who I thought was sleeping, just says, "I am so sorry." We awkwardly laughed about it and then went to bed. At least you guys laughed about it. To be honest, that takes a huge chunk of awkwardness out. Imagine if he just said he was sorry and started to cry. 3 women in a kitchen. One is pretty overweight and recently miscarried. I knew. The third person didn't and started asking questions about how the pregnancy was coming along. I'm peeling carrots, just dying inside. The overweight woman who miscarried informed the woman that she lost the baby a month ago. I'm a coward and just pretended to focus on the carrots. Horrible. This is why I never ask a pregnant woman any questions about her pregnancy, nor do I mention it at all. This was my freshman year of college in 2006. One of my gen ed class requirements was a minority studies class and the only one left was women's studies. I figured it would be a perfectly okay class and it honestly was. The problem was this guy in the class named Carter. Carter was the precursor to the modern day ladies I must apologize for my gender look at me, I'm such a good ally to women guys, and every time he raised his hand you could see a lot of people in the room cringe. He had said something dumb and the professor had moved on to a new topic when he raised his hand again. He then said, "I just wanna apologize again for what my gender does to women." I feel like everyone in the class was staring a hole through their desk because of how utterly embarrassing this guy was. The professor said, "Okay, if that's all you wanted to say, let's move on." And oh lord, does thinking about that still makes me cringe. Lecture. An integral part of my architecture education were what we called either critiques or juries. Basically, you present your work in front of a group of your classmates and professors to which questions could be asked and suggestions be offered. It was an incredibly valuable part of our education, as getting and offering feedback really encouraged more critical thought about what we were doing. Unfortunately, it also meant that if you produced crappy work, you'd get torn to pieces. Anyways, come our final jury presentations for the semester. This one guy pins up his presentation materials and physical model and gives his presentation. It was bad. Seriously bad. Aside from only taking up a quarter of his allotted time, it looked like his presentation materials were half finished after a night of fervent scrambling to get the work done. There just wasn't enough to even start to ask questions or give suggestions to him. So everyone, trying to think of at least something productive to say, kept completely silent. It was probably only 15 seconds, but it was the absolute most awkward silence of my life. Eventually, one of the professors spoke up and said something along the lines of, "If this is the kind of work that you think is acceptable, you probably shouldn't look at continuing in this program." To which the guy just replied, "Sorry," and walked out. He didn't show up the next year. So yeah, I have never felt as awkward even in situations where I'm the subject of the awkwardness. That's not even a reality check, that's a reality suplex. Watching pallbearers lose control of a coffin they were carrying down a steep set of granite church steps after the funeral was over. An ice sleet storm took place during the funeral service, so the steps were slick. Several pallbearers went down as the coffin landed on the granite steps and slid the rest of the way down to the sidewalk below. Fortunately, the lid didn't open, but we all felt badly for them as the look in their faces showed they were mortified. Rigor mortified. Probably not that bad in the grand scheme of things, but it's been going on for months now. My friend will just blurt out guesses to questions in my physical chemistry class. She sits in the front row, and before anyone has a chance to answer if they actually know, she will just randomly guess, over and over again. It's so awkward because she is almost always wrong, and the teacher asks her to explain and she doesn't ever have a good reason for what she said. I am really curious about your friend now. Went with my dad to get a blizzard at Dairy Queen one day. Now, my dad can be very particular about what he likes. These events are few and far between, but he knows what he wants. What he doesn't want is the cashier flipping the blizzard over to show that the ice cream is so cold it'll stay in the cup. I'm assuming that since minimum wage fast food life sucks butt, having worked similar jobs before, that these young kids are required by policy to do the signature flip. We're in the drive-thru, we pay, we get our ice cream, and the kid flips it. So, my dad flips out. It wasn't an angry tirade and it certainly wasn't meant to be directed at the kid, but I definitely was mouthing "I am so sorry" to this kid as my dad rambles on about napkins and how the cup dribbles when it's flipped over. As we drove away, I had to explain to my dad that there's a 90% chance the kid hates his job, and if he does, it's 100% because of customers like him. If they don't do the flip, the customer gets their next blizzard free. My ex coming out for dinner with my parents and I knowing he wouldn't have to pay and always ordering the most expensive thing on the menu. One time in particular we all ordered pasta dishes that were about £10 each and some tap water for the table, and he ordered a £30 steak with sides and a beer. Never felt more embarrassed in my life. Oh man, that is the worst. I always feel so awkward when I'm being treated and I just can't imagine feeling like this is an okay thing to do. I don't get embarrassed because of a certain mental disorder, but I have seen some awkward crap. I was at a friend's house when I was a teenager. We will call him C. C had his GF over and we were watching a movie in his living room. I had a girl over as well for the record. I was sitting laying in a recliner and the girl I had over was sitting in my lap, but she was short and she was angled so that she wasn't facing C and his GF. C and his girl were on the couch. He was sitting and she ended up laying out with her head in his lap. Now they had been sharing a blanket and somehow C and her thought I wouldn't notice, I guess, but she ends up giving him head. The blanket was over them but you could clearly see her head bobbing even with it there. Now my girl couldn't see them from how she was laying and I couldn't see down the hallway. I did however see what was happening. C had his head cocked back and his eyes closed when his mother walks in and plops down right next to them. Now I would have warned him, but I didn't have time because of how the living room was set up and I didn't see her. She starts talking to him and it snaps him out of it. His mom didn't notice what was happening, however. She did notice her head under the blanket. C's mom: "What's going on?" C: "Oh, nothing mom. She just fell asleep." C's mom: "Oh, that's cute. You shouldn't cover her head up though, son. She probably can't breathe." His mom reaches forward and yanks the blanket back before any of them could react. Now having come in unnoticed and the girl having a blanket over her head, I'm guessing she just froze when she heard his mom's voice. I say this because when she pulled the blanket back the girl still had his dong in her mouth. His mom screams and C and the girl both go the deepest shade of red I've ever seen. The girl gets up and runs out crying while C gets up to chase after her with his dong still out. His mom had jumped up to leave the room and he hopped up and ends up ramming his mother in her stomach with his dong before awkwardly hauling butt out. The girl I was with saw what was happening and was blushing from the second-hand embarrassment, and C's mom was slack-jawed blushing with a mixture of anger and astonishment. During all of this I am just laughing like a maniac. I have asked for a diagnosis but I'm a psychopath. I made a post on our course Alien thanks to you Oliver Thekth. Anyone who has some questions can go there if they want to ask about it. He hopped up and ends up ramming his mother in her stomach with his dong before awkwardly. You think IT can't get worse and then IT does. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.